Hi, this is ColdKlaus here for post GBT13 Chaos. So right now, Overlord's going to be a very popular deck. So this deck is a little bit weaker against the new Overlords, taking away circles, locked cards. But with the ability to still hand control and create power lanes, this is still a good deck. You can still take it into the upcoming meta. So for my starter, I just use Carbon. A lot of the early plays in this deck is Counterblast intensive. So this getting out Zinc to Counterblast 2 is really important. Or if you already have Zincs, this can search out Meat and Axe or Volt Line if you use either one of those. So that's what I use for the starter. For the trigger lineup, I run 6 crits. So I run 4 Starvader Paradigm Shift Dragons. By the way, all the cards in this deck are going to be Starvader, just to make consistency because you have to Counterblast. So Paradigm Shift Dragon, you can either put these back in your deck to stop deck out, or you can lock back rows in order to make Deluge plays easier, or when you're trying to just lock back rows and they have to choose units to lock, it's a lot easier to choose their front. And then I just have 2 other vanilla crits in here. For draw triggers, I run 6 draw triggers, so I run 6 and 6. So I run 4 of the Duck plus 3 to Soul, plus 3k into Soul, and then I run 2 vanillas, so 6 and 6. I have also thought about running 8 crit and 4 draw, but right now having more draw power against multi-attack is very good right now, especially in the early game, and crits aren't as important with Deluge giving free damage. So you can either do 8-4 or 6-6, it's entirely up to you. And I run 4 Starvader Ether Loopers just for the vanilla heal triggers. I don't run Lacus Karina just because I want everything to be Starvader. So that's it for the triggers. So for grade 1s, I run 4 of the new Starvader Perfect Guard. If you're playing against Amnesty, this card never goes off in the mirror match, but against a lot of other decks that don't have abilities to fix locked cards, this will always go off. All it is if your opponent has 3 or more locked cards, when this is used, you can draw a card, it pays for itself. So that's very nice.
Isn't it 3 or more locked cards in general, not just your opponent?
It's when this unit is placed on G from hand, you may pay the cost of you choose one if your opponent has 3 or more. Okay. So it's just opponent. So, but you'll never have one of your unlocked units unless you're using Lacus Karina. But still, once you have a mass locked field with Glue Ball, the condition is ridiculously easy to pull off. Next, I run 4 of the Starvader Stride Fodder. All it is when you discard it, you Soul Blast, and you can look at the top 7 and add a Chaos unit, so just a Chaos grade 3. When you're discarding for Deluge, or you're planning to discard for Stride next turn, the card pays for itself if you can manage to get it. So for that reason, I'm running 7 Chaos grade 3s, which I'll get to later. Next, I run 4 Zincs. You want to see this card as often as possible. Your early plays are Counterblast heavy, like I was talking about with Carbon. You want to see this as early as possible. The soul charging is not that important, since you're not going to be on the OG Chaos as often, but the Counterblast, so you can use Muleptins, Globuladia, Chaos Universe, are very, very important. And then for the final grade 2s, I use 2 Meat and Axes. So you can either use Meat and Axe, or you can use Starvader Volt Line. The reason why I run these right now is because this combined with the grade 2 Globuladia, if you can manage to use these in a combination with each other, they create a 26,000 lane by itself, even without any other extra power. The only downside is that the Omega Lock on hit, or the plus 4k, is GB restricted. So some people, if they like to go to grade 3 before their opponent, they like to use Volt Line to Omega Lock early. But in my opinion, Omega Lock is not that good right now because the opponent can fix their circles, especially with Overlord. So that's what I run for grade 1s. For grade 2, I run my favorite card in the deck that I like to use, Muleptin. It's a Counterblast 2, which is a pretty heavy cost, but not as heavy because of Zinc. You Counterblast 2, you can choose a circle, and if they have a locked card already, they put a locked card down. So this with Chaos Universe, if your opponent is playing scared and just keeps the field empty and they think that they're good, you just call cards from hand, you fix everything. You fix their field, you set it up for mass locks next turn. This is just a really good card. You want to see it as often as possible. And then I play 4 Photon. The only reason you wouldn't run 4 of these is if you can't afford them. They're just really good. You need to run them in every single Starvader build. It's just a free lock. It helps set up your field for Deluge, and also it's non-GB restricted. So if you go to grade 3 first, you just lock their field right away. And for the final grade 2s, I run 4 Globuladias. I want to see this card as often as possible when I hit a Glue Ball turn. So if I put this down, I counterblast 1, I choose one of, basically the opponent chooses a card from their drop zone and puts it down. It can call over units as well. So if you got a full field of locked cards in a resist unit, this card can get around resist. Also, you can use it as a setup for Deluge. So I'll explain those plays later with Deluge. But right now I'm just running 4, 4, and 4. Each of these are good in their certain parts of the game for Stride, and you want to see them as often as possible. So for grade 3s, I run 4 of what you want to see most on your Vanguard, Chaos Breaker Crisis. On Ride or on Stride, you counterblast 1, your opponent chooses a locked card and locks it. This is just good if you're on grade 3 first, or if you're on grade 3 second, you just fill up the field pretty easily. And it's also got the effect of whenever your opponent's locked card is unlocked, if a unit wasn't retired that turn, you can retire it and draw a card. It doesn't cost a Soul Blast like the other limit break of the OG Chaos. So, say you're playing against Messiah, this card equalizes the Messiah matchup, because if both of their front rear guards are locked, if they try to unlock both of them, Chaos Breaker Crisis retires one, you draw a card, you use that drawn card to block the other attack, and you just block the Vanguard like before. So this equalizes the matchup. So some people think that Messiah is not, Messiah has a pretty good matchup against this. Chaos Crisis's effect just completely negates the advantage that they have. And then just because of the name, I run 3 of these. You can put extra emphasis on the limit break to mass retire if you want to use Alt Welder. Currently I don't, because it's a little too awkward to use, and Glue Ball and Deluge are better win conditions right now. But the mass draw from the mass retire is pretty good at times. But otherwise, I just use this if I don't have a crisis. So for the strides, I run 4 Chaos Universe. This is what you always want to use first stride. It's pretty decent second stride too, so because I want to use it twice max, I run 4. All it is you bring it out during your turn, counterblast, flip up a copy, choose a card, choose an open rear guard, and you just take a card and lock it from their hand. So this card in usage with Muleptin, like I said before, fills up their front row. It clips cards out of their hand. It's just really, really good early. Also, if you use this effect and you have 2 face-up cards in your G-Zone after cost, you can lock another card. So it's a good follow-up if you don't have a better option on your second stride. So 4 is just a good number. And then I run 4 of the Finisher and the Mass Locker of the deck. Probably one of the best strides that you can use right now. Glue Ball Dragon. This is a simple Soul Blast cost, no counterblast. And say you have 5 cards face up in your G-Zone after cost, your opponent has to choose 5 cards and lock them. So as soon as you get 3 or 4 cards face up in your G-Zone, this is really good for mass locking. And also it has a really good GB3. During your turn, all your units in the front row gain plus 3k for their locked cards. So if they've got 5, 15k to the front row. So if you've got a Glue Ball Dragon out front, and you have Globuladia, if you used it that turn, and Meetanax is GB, this is at 15k plus 11 plus 15, so that's 41 right there. And then this is 16 plus 6 because of this effect, and plus 4 of this effect, 26. So these are both at 41,000. This is a really ridiculously good finishing turn, and you just want to see those as often as possible. Not to mention, you can use this first if your opponent fills up their field. You can lock 1 card. So you can either use this and a Photon to lock their front row. So you could use this first, but normally you'll want to hold these until late game so you get more out of them. After that, I run 2 Chaos Breaker Deluges. This card is really good when you want to give your opponent free damage. This kind of serves up Glue Ball Dragon to finish off your opponent. So you'll probably do this second to third stride. You'll take 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, and which of course gets around resist if you call over a resist unit. Then you take one of those cards, one of those locked cards, and give them a free damage. So not good when your opponent's at 5, but if your opponent's at 3 or 4 and they keep a big hand advantage, this just gets them the free damage, and it takes problem cards off the field. Not to mention this card's greatest strength, it gets around resist units. So if you stride Deluge, use Crisis Effect to lock, and then use either your crits, Photon, or Globuladia to lock more cards. Deluge can help finish off that field. So in terms of effective power, even taking 2 cards out of your hand, it doesn't match up to Glue Ball Dragon late game, but you still want to run 2 Deluges. I might consider bumping this up to 3 if resist gets too ridiculous, like with the new Asha or the new Aquaforce. So we'll see about that. I run 1 Amnesty Messiah. This is for if I want to keep up my momentum in the mirror match and my opponent locks me, I can just go to Amnesty, get the extra crit, and try and finish them off. Even though I said before, if you use Amnesty against Chaos Breaker Crisis, it is an equalizer, but if you're up in momentum, because your opponent, you take a lot out of your opponent, then all they could do is lock you, Amnesty Messiah can really help finish your opponent off. It's good. I would consider this being a 3rd Deluge or a GB8, but right now it's going to be an Amnesty Messiah. So for my G guards, I run 5 G guards. I run 2 Destiny Guardians. This is really good, of course, in the mirror match to unlock your own units, but it's also really good defensively if your opponent has locked units. So what you can do is you can, if you haven't used Chaos Breaker Crisis effect, you can say if they've got a locked card, you use Destiny Guardian, unlock it, retire it, and draw a card. So you basically took away one of their rear guards and you have an extra card to guard with. It's pretty good at 2. You never really need to use it more than twice, but you could bump the number up to 3 if you have more Link Jokers in your meta, but 2 is pretty comfortable right now. I run 1 Lacus Karina. I would either run this card at 1 or 2. 1's a comfortable number for me. It's really good against deleters. I see a lot of deleters, so when they're given turn, they have to retire given and 4 rear guards. This messes it up entirely. Even though this doesn't really work for Deep Lease anymore because of the new Perfect Guard that got announced that gives your whole field resist, but right now Lacus Karina is very good against deleters. It's good against anything else that works on their that uses their back rear guards, but mostly it's just good for that extra lock. And then I run 1 Scryu. If I'm going up against a Dragstrata Luard or something that restricts my grade 1s or higher from hand, you just need the 25k, and with 6 draw triggers, this is a really easy cost to pay. So it's not too bad. It's just Scryu makes a good usage of those extra draw triggers that you had or extra grade 3s that you're not using. Then I use 1 Desturgan. Desturgan's just a Soul Blast. If I use it, it's just a 15k guard, and if your opponent has 2 or more locked cards, you can draw a card. Well, it's just if the number of locked cards are 2 or more, so it can count yours. But normally you're going to offensively lock your opponent, and then you're either going to use your Perfect Guard or Desturgan. Guarding gives you free cards. So it's really nice. If you just need a 15k guard and you want to just keep on pressing your advantage, Desturgan's really good. So overall, like I said, Overlord will be able to fix locked cards, but since the objective of the deck is not just to lock, but win through hand control and really big lanes with Glue Ball, then it works out very well. So normally how the early game looks is you're going to be using Chaos Universe with either Muleptin or Photon. This will help start off your initial lock. You just get the full field going. You can probably use Chaos Breaker Crisis to retire 1, but after that you're going to be using Glue Ball. Glue Ball with Globulated and Meatinax. You want to see your field wants to look like this eventually. 1 or 2 Globulatias with 1 or 2 Meatinaxes, making 41k plus lanes. It's just ridiculous the power that you can get with Link Joker now. The problem before is that you couldn't even hit 21ks, but it's just way better now. And then after that, you'll have Deluges. So you'll want to see Deluges. You can either use Globulatia, you can either use Photon, or you can use Muleptin. And you can use Deluge to get away with the resist units and give them free damage. And not to mention, if they haven't used their starter, if there's a grade 1 that you want to just get off the field and put in their damage, you can take away a lot of their key cards very easily. So this will still be a good deck to use in the upcoming meta. It'll have some problems, but I think that right now, the basic grade 2 setup is the best. But that's pretty much it. All right.